Mike from Mike's Fishing Reel Repair, and today we're going to be servicing a Diawa 1600C. Customer just wants the reel to be serviced and a little bit of cleanup. The reel looks fairly clean, but anyways, I'm going to take it apart. We're also going to order him a side screw. He had asked me if I could get him a side screw. I guess they did a little Mickey Mouse job here. We'll just order that. Alright, I'm going to take it apart and I'll show you guys how I maintenance the reel. Okay, first what we do is we're going to take the drag knob off, and then we're going to take the spool off. We'll set that aside. Usually I have a parts tray, so I usually just put everything aside on the parts tray. Okay, now we're going to take the handle off. Looks like they had a lot of washers and nuts for that long screw. Set that aside. Put the handle aside like so. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to open the side plate so we can see what's inside the reel. So we have three screws. I think on this fishing reel, all three screws on the side plate are all the same, so you don't have to worry about one being different. Usually if there's one that's different, you got to remember where it goes, or the reel won't function correctly. So the reel looks pretty clean. Other than that, it's a little dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to take everything apart and grease it up. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unscrew this screw right here from the crosswind block, so that way I can remove the shaft. Shaft should just come out like that. Now we can remove the main gear. And then we can remove the crosswind block. And then we can remove the crosswind gear. Just like that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the rotor. And it looks fairly clean. It actually looks like it was maintained at one point or serviced. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the dog gear or ratchet gear. Set that aside. Now I'm going to remove the main gear plate. That's that piece right here, and so that way I can remove the main pinion gear with the bearing. Set that all aside. So like I said, it looks fairly clean. And it does look like it's been serviced at one point. So So there's another screw underneath here. That's it. So I'm going to do a little cleanup, and I'm going to put some oil on the pinion gear. I'm going to look at the gear and make sure all the teeth are all fine and there's no chips or anything. And then I'll get back to you guys after I clean it all up, and then we'll grease it all up and put it back together. All right, welcome back, guys. We got all the parts fairly clean, and now what we're going to do is put the reel back together. So I'll show you guys how I'm going to do that. Okay, so first thing I'm going to start off on is the main gear, and what we did was we cleaned it all up. We checked all the teeth to make sure there was no chips or anything, and everything was fine. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start greasing this up, and I'm going to use fishing reel grease. I don't recommend anybody use different kinds of grease because that's just doesn't work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of grease on this part here, on this shaft. And we put a little bit of grease on the back part of it too, just a little bit. We don't want to put too much. Now we got this bushing. Actually, I'm sorry, there's a washer first. Put that washer in there. There's little more slight grease there. Just want a nice little coating so that everything works nice and smooth. Now we're going to pop this on, just like that. We'll do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to add a little bit of a slight grease over here on this part of the shaft, on the main gear. We got this other bushing. I'm going to put this one on. We're going to slide that like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grease up the crosswind gear and the main gear here. Well, this gear here runs the crosswind gear, so we're going to put a little bit of grease on that. Not too much, and we're going to put a little bit of grease on the bushing. Not too much because we don't want to overload it. If we overload it, the reel is going to run really stiff. So if you have too much grease, that's not good also. So we're just going to slightly grease up this gear here. I like to use a brush. I've seen a lot of guys use brushes, and the brush works amazing. Alright, that's pretty good. A little more back on it because I kind of took it off with my glove. Alright, we're going to set that aside. That's all set. Okay, now I'm going to grab the housing, and I'm going to add a little bit of grease inside this spot here where the shaft goes in with the bushing, and then we want to add a little bit of grease here. This is for the crosswind gear, and we just want a slight coating of it. Should be good enough. I'm going to add a little bit of grease on the inner groove here where the gear bearing, the pinion gear bearing goes in. And what we want to do is just kind of lightly put some grease there and just a slight grease on the top here for the pinion, the bearing plate. Now, the dog, I'm not going to really put any grease on it. What I will do is I'll add a slight bit of oil because it's working. Everything's working fine, so I don't see any reason to throw any grease on it. Eccentric, working fine, so not much to do there. Alright, so now the next step we're going to do is we're going to take our crosswind gear and we're going to grease that up also. Like I said, just put a slight, just a slight grease, because a little bit of grease goes a long way. This starts to turn around and the grease starts to get inside all the gears. A little light coating on the bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pop that in inside the groove. As you can see, I get the crosswind gear in with the little stud here. I usually have that stud facing down. Now I'm going to take the crosswind block. I'm going to give a slight little coating of grease inside that groove right there. That's where that little stud goes in, and it rides back and forth. We're going to just lightly grease the face, the bottom of the face of the crosswind block. So we're going to also pop that in, and now what we want to do is make sure that we have enough grease inside that groove there for that. Let me show you. For that little stud right there on that crosswind gear, right in there. So I'm going to slide that through in there, and then we're just going to pop that in like so, and then we're going to leave it sitting towards the back, just like that. Okay. Alright, so the next thing I want to get done is I want to get the main pinion gear with the bearing. So I already put some oil in the bearing, but what I'll do is I'm going to add some more oil on it when I pop it in. But right now I'm going to add a little bit of grease to the main pinion gear. Just a slight, because we already have grease on the main gear. Just put a little bit on that shaft too. Like I said, you don't want to overload too much grease, because then the reel won't ride nice and smooth. Okay. So now we're going to take that main pinion gear with the bearing, and we're going to pop it in its position just like that. So it's going to look like that. I'm going to take my bearing oil, and I'm going to put a slight couple of drops like that. And what we'll do is we'll just soak into the bearing. Okay, now I'm going to grab my plate. And the plate sits just like this. Now we need our 3 screws. Just bear with me. It's really hard to get into these. These little screws are tough to stop. So okay, I got one. And basically, you just want to start your 3 screws in before you tighten it down. I mean, if you could do it with a screwdriver, that's fine. I usually try to start it with my finger. Now what we do is we just tighten down the bearing plate. You don't want to over tighten them, just want them nice and snug. That way you don't strip the screws. Okay, so that's all set. Nice and smooth. Now we have the dog ratchet. We're gonna pop that on. Now mind you, there's like a squarish kind of groove, so you kind of, if you look on the pinion gear, it's also squared out. You kind of want to just try to fit it in like that. And basically, you want to make sure that when you turn your centric to kick the dog in, that's going to work like so. So that way your anti-reverse works correctly. Alright, so that's all set. Just a slight bit of grease on the top of that. Not too much, just a slight. And then these little threads right here on the main pinion gear, I usually like to just dab a little bit of slight grease. That way kind of keeps a lot of the salt or sand or whatever dirt that can get inside the reel, and just any type of corrosion to stop it from coming through. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our main gear and we're going to pop it in just like that. Now we're going to take our shaft. Alright, the shaft has a flat side. That flat side is going to face up towards you. So we're going to grab just a little bit of grease. We'll just put a little bit of grease on the shaft. Not much at all, just a slight bit of it. Just like that. And like I said, we're going to take it, I'm going to put it like this so I kind of try to show you guys. And you want to slide it in the main pinion gear, and then that flat side you just got to face up. Just give me a second. Might have to do a little wiggling like that. You want it to face up so that way your hole from your shaft matches up with the hole for your crosswind block. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get our little crosswind block screw that connects to the shaft, or connects the shaft to the crosswind block. We're going to pop it in like that. We're going to screw that down. Just nice and snug, that's it. Don't over tighten it. You strip that, you're screwed. Now what we're going to do is grab our brush, get a little bit of grease, or just a slight little bit of grease on top like so. Just a little, not much. Just want to coat it. Now the side plate screw holes, we're going to add a little bit of grease to that, just a slight. That way it can help seal any dirt from coming in. Sometimes what I like to do is just slightly coat the outer rim here where the plate snaps in. That also helps seal out any dirt. Now, not all fishing reels you can do that too, but this one you can. And a lot of guys don't do it, but I do it. So, anyways, just make sure you add, just like I said, a little bit of grease into there, into the little tiny holes to kind of protect it from dirt getting inside the reel. Now, next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put my rotor on. Oh, actually I got ahead of myself again. I have to take the shaft off. I tend to do that a lot. Sometimes I always get ahead of myself, so you need to put the rotor on first before you put your shaft. So, okay. So we're going to pop the rotor on. Like so. Put the rotor nut on. Like that. Once again, you get your shaft, slide it through with the flat side facing up, and kind of just wiggle it in like that, so that way your shaft hole matches up with your crosswind. If it doesn't, you can always get like a pick like this and kind of wiggle it in there to match it up. And then once again, we're going to take our screw, crosswind screw, and we're going to tighten down the crosswind to the shaft. Just like that. Like I said, just snug. Okay, so that's all set. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to take our side plate, and actually before we put our side plate on, we want to brush in a little bit of grease, just a little bit, right on the inside of the shaft hole. And you could put a little bit of grease also on the edge, on the inner edge of the fishing reel plate. That will also just help seal any dirt or corrosion or sand or whatever from coming in. That's good. I'll put a little more on the inside, so just for more protection. Okay, looks great. Okay, now we're going to take our plate. I'm going to pop our plate on, just like that. Now we're going to take our 3 side plate screws, and we're going to start them by hand. Just like that. You got screwdrivers. Now we're gonna just tighten down. So anyways, while I'm doing this, as you've seen in the beginning, the reel was in really good condition. It was fairly clean. But just because you have a clean reel does not mean you should not maintenance your reel once a year. You should always maintenance or service your reel. That way it could stay in tip-top condition and free from any type of corrosion. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up the shaft like so. I'm looking for my pliers. Usually I don't use pliers, usually I use my wrench, but I don't have a wrench today, so today I'll be using the pliers. And I just want to snug down on that nut, on the rotor nut. Now if you use pliers, be really careful not to bend your shaft or screw up your gears on your shaft, because yeah, that will cause a problem. So now what we're gonna do is give it a couple of spins back and forth like that, make sure everything's working nice and smooth. Now we're gonna check our anti-reverse, and it's working great. Now I looked at the bail before while I was fixing the reel, cleaning the reel, and it was working fine. There was no reason for me to take that all apart. I see no reason for that. So what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit of oil in between the joints, especially right around here where the fishing line goes. And this side you could actually add a drop or two. It won't hurt anything. It'll just keep it working nice and smooth, and then you just kind of work the bail like so. As you can see, it works really nice. So, okay, so now we're going to take our handle. We're going to pop our handle back on. I can go into get our funky Mickey Mouse side screw, and we'll just put that on for now until I order the new part, which I already did, which should come in a day or so. Depends on UPS. Since the pandemic's happened, that sometimes things are a little slower than usual. So we're gonna snug that. I don't want to. Starting to see that because this is not the correct screw. We're not going to tighten it down. Seems like we don't want to strip it, because if we get the other screw, we don't want to mess that section there for the handle until we get the other screw. I don't recommend putting Mickey Mouse screws on the side, because like I said, you strip that, then you're most likely going to have to get yourself a new handle. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check out the drag system on the spool. So how I do that is it's like a spring right here, and what we want to do is we want to pop that spring out like this, and make sure you hold on to it, because you don't want to lose that. I'll check the drag. What I do with that is I just grab it like that. It's a little bit dirty, so we'll just give that a little cleaning. And we're gonna lay out our drag system out here, and it won't look too bad. Look fairly clean. Doesn't look like there's much that I need to do. Doesn't seem like these Teflon. This got Teflon drag system here, so I don't really have to oil these. They kind of self-lubricate themselves. I might add just a slight oil to this bottom one here, or a little bit of grease. I usually use some type of drag grease for that. And what I'll do is I'll take a swab and make sure that there's take out any type of debris. So I don't know if you can see it, but there is a little bit of dirt. Now a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll try to maintenance their drag system on their spools, and some people just don't know what they're doing. And when you take them out, you got to make sure you take them out in the order that, when you take them out, you got to make sure you put them back in the order that you took them out. because if you don't, and drag system is not going to work correctly. So like I said, I'm going to put a little bit of grease on this one here. This is the bottom one, just a slight, not a whole lot. Alright, so we're going to pop that one in first. Then we're going to take this, so now we got is a, next one is the metal washer. Just give it a little wipe, just in case there's any corrosion or dirt on it. You get a lot of corrosion and dirt from when you're fishing. Now this one has a little flat side, so you want to make sure, and it's got a groove, rounded off side. Put the flat side down. These I don't really have to do anything to because the Teflon washes, so they pretty much lubricate themselves. Then you have an air washer, and that air washer goes, see those little notches, just like that. Then you got another Teflon washer. Then you got another steel washer with a flat side, and you want just make sure you put the flat side down, just like that. Then you take your spring, you pop your spring back in. Now inside here there's like a little groove. You want to make sure your spring is snug inside that groove, or it will pop out. And if it does pop out, I mean, your drag system could still work, but eventually, you know, if you loosen your drag too much, if your drag knob comes out, you could also lose your whole drag system. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And now we're going to take a spool. I'm going to pop that back on. And put a drag knob on. Drag system's working great. Alright. Now I don't recommend tightening down really tight on your drag system and then putting it away, because that's no good, because what you're doing is especially if you have a reel that the drag system has to be oiled. And what you're doing is when you're keeping it tight, the drag system really tight, and you put it away, it's squeezing the oil out of your drag system. So just kind of, if you're going to put it away for the season, just kind of loosen up on your drag, you know, just so that way you'll have a longer life with your drag system. And so that's basically it, you guys. So that's the Diawa 1600C. It's working great. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and give us a call. Alright, you guys take care.